players left. Pulls up, looking for the lead, and he got it. Jalen Williams, 2 seconds, 1:11.109. Now SGA, probing, piercing, spinning, hanging for the lead, and SGA knocks it down. The Thunder finally get the defensive stop, and SGA puts them in front.
I'm Kenrich Williams. You're listening to Topic Thunder.
And welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Top of Thunder podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Hunsinger at Thunder Chats. We're part of the Bleav Network, and actually, there's a lot of us part of the Bleav Network today. So, before we get into that, got to introduce my co-host, my compatriot, my compadre, coming to us from the Wayne Manor himself today, Batman, Alex Roy. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Just excited for the finals, man, and excited for this. Excited for this podcast, man. We get to hear a variation of takes and get to dive into the series. So fun times. Yeah,
and without further ado, let's get into it. So joining us today are a couple of guys who are brothers on the pod, brothers on, I guess, on the court, brothers in life. They have been talking Indiana Pacers for their entire lives, as they said, here to set the tone and set the pace, talking about the Indiana Pacers and their matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA Finals. Please welcome the brothers Brad and Ryan Knight of the Pacers Posted Podcast. I apologize.
All good. Dylan, thanks for having us. Alex, happy to be here. This is fun. This is our first crossover, so what better time to do it than the NBA Finals?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it really frustrates me to see the conversation around this finals, like in a derogatory sense. Like everybody's like, oh, these small market teams, like they don't play fun brand of basketball. Like the star power's there, like, or isn't there. This is bad product for the NBA. And it's just like, man, if you can't, like I even said, like if you can't appreciate like the best offense in the playoffs going against one of the historically best defenses in the playoffs, one of the best pure scorers in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander versus one of the best pure playmakers in Tyrese Halliburton, like just the, like as Baraheni said, the oil and water style of the two programs. Like I'm very excited for this series. Like hand up, like, before we get into it, before the season started, we made our predictions. I had Pacers as a 3 seed going into it, and I think I had them losing in the East Conference Finals because I thought the Celtics were going to be inevitable. But that's beside the point. Howie's my favorite non-Thunder player. I am absolutely like just thrilled and stoked for this finals.
And that's from somebody that absolutely glazes every Kentucky guard that's in the NBA. So
I love it.
There you go.
Rocking the Kentucky Wildcat 96 championship shirt. There we go. Guys,
Well,
I mean, right off the top, like what are your feelings like, I guess, on this season before we get into the finals? Because, like I said, I thought you guys would be a 3 seed. It didn't start off like you guys were going to be a 3 seed. You went through a lot of downs early in the season, and then you really hit the ground running. So kind of walk us through, your feelings through the season, that brought you here.
Yep. Can I share real quick? There's a small underlining story, too, with that. We have Paul George to thanks for Shai and Tyrese. If you look at it from both sides, if you go from the trade tree there. So it's kind of fun to thanks, but we did start off, it didn't look like the Pacers. We were out of rhythm, 10-15 to start the season, just didn't have our flow and had made some adjustments, still kind of working Siakam into the lineup. And what's really changed is Tyrese's and Siakam's synergy. Not being able to play a different style basketball, because coming from Toronto, if you look at how Tyrese plays, free flowing, and then you bring in Siakam, somebody who's more of a low post game, kind of wants to slow it down. And what you saw in the Knicks series is Siakam was out and running. If not the most effective part of our game was Siakam getting out in transition and finding those kind of, leeways. And that's why this series has so much back and forth, because the Thunder have the best transition defense. We might have the best transition offense. So it's really going to be what can come out of those two different styles of play and who can really have their moments. So it's been a wild ride, and really we've been riding it from March is when we really took the next level of our team. And if you've been following the Pacers at all, we've had a couple of Cinderella comebacks now with the Bucks series, the Cavs series, into the Knicks. There's been 7-point comebacks with 40 seconds left and even beyond that. And it really actually started back in March, where this team had a crazy number of close finishes and crunch time wins that I think led to a belief in this team that they just never believe they're out of the series. And I can tell you, Thunder fans listening right now, that if you're comfortable with the 5 or 6 point lead going into crunch time, that's kind of where we make our living, where I think the Thunder are more prone to blowing a team out and getting, their big runs, getting up 20. And that's something I think we will probably see at some point in this series. But I think I was listening to a podcast you guys had done. The Thunder haven't played a lot of games with that crunch time minutes. Not to say I don't think they're capable of it, but the Pacers seem to find themselves in that a lot more often.
Yeah, I would add one thing just real quick on the start of the season, Dylan. We were injured, and I know that's not an excuse. Yeah. Nobody wants to talk about it. We sure as hell have heard about it plenty through the last couple of playoff runs, because everybody said Giannis was injured last year, Dame's injured this year, the Cavs were banged up a little bit in the second round. We didn't have Aaron Nesmith for a huge chunk to start the season. Andrew Nembhard missed extended time. We were playing G League guys in the middle of the year. We lose our 2 backup centers to Achilles tears within about a week of one another. And so there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes roster-wise just to get guys on the floor. And when you say names like Nesmith and Nembhard, I don't know how much those resonate with Thunder fans, but they are critical to what we do. And they have been, in the last 2 postseasons, just irreplaceable, frankly. Their shot making and defensive playmaking has been a huge part of why we've been able to go on these runs. But it was a putrid start to the year. 10-15. We were like you. We actually didn't say 3 seed. Our season preview pod, we had the Pacers as a 4 seed, which is where we ultimately landed. But it didn't look like that starting out at all.
Yeah, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish, right?
Yeah. So I just want to add, as far as like how you started, Dylan, talking about, these 2 teams being in the finals and how we got here. I just want to say that when the calendar turned to 2025, these 2 teams have been the best teams in the league. They have been the best team record-wise. They've been the best team as far as like, how they've played and how they've progressed throughout the year and how they've notched up throughout the year. Or throughout, 2025. And so kind of looking at this, and I know there's going to be a lot of Twitter heads saying, small market finals, the Paul George Bowl, blah, blah, blah. These 2 teams are the 2 teams that probably deserve to be in the finals. And honestly, these 2 teams are the 2 teams that are the healthiest coming up into this point. We both were injured throughout the season, Chet being out for a lot of time, Hartenstein missed a lot of the first part of the season. But as the season has progressed, while others have gotten more injured, we've actually gotten healthier. And so it's kind of proven itself that depth has been such a big thing for both teams. And it's showing so much right now in the finals as far as these 2 teams being here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, when you talk about playoff basketball, we're coming out of a series against the Knicks, and unfortunately Thibodeau, gets the whack afterwards. But it's all, playoff basketball historically has been, you don't go deeper than 7 or 8 guys. And there were games where we were playing 11 and 12 guys at times, in the past couple of series. And I think it's allowed us to have the longevity, the legs to throw different bodies. And you guys, I feel like when I watch your team, we're kind of mirror images of each other in that regard. We're not super top heavy. I mean, obviously you guys have the MVP, so that's a little bit of a different dynamic, but everybody else, I mean, Chet and Jalen are draft picks. You made some smart acquisitions with Caruso and Hartenstein, like, free agent signings. It's the way the teams have been built is it's a kudos to Presti and to Kevin Pritchard for not trying to take a shortcut and just, do the Matt Ishbia, let's throw a bunch of money at everybody, because it doesn't work. And that's kind of been proven out here with these 2 teams making it now to the finals and doing it, playing into their depth.
Yeah, I'm writing a preview. I'm sorry, just real quick. I'm writing a preview shameless plug. Writing a preview on the finals. And one of the things that I do say on there is that we may be witnessing the transition of a new era of NBA basketball where, the new CBA, the second apron, all these things are kind of causing teams to build their teams differently than they did in the past. And so this literally may be like the first finals where we see that kind of taken into effect and showing how teams will probably be built from here on out. I think the super team thing, whenever you talk about players making over $50 million and you having like 2 or 3 of them on your roster, that's going to start to bite into how you create your teams and how you build your teams and how you build your depth. And so I do think that what we are witnessing now is the beginning of a new era as far as this new CBA and how the NBA and how these teams will start to build from here on out.
Yeah, we got Justin in the chat saying the Thunder being the death of super teams is so poetic after watching KD leave to join the Monstars in Oakland. So, yeah, I mean, hey, it's only right? Let's get into the series, guys. Yeah. And I think, obviously there's a head of the snake for your guys' offensive attack, and it is the aforementioned Tyrese Halliburton, what the Halliburton, if you will. Obviously, there is a really good defensive player on the Oklahoma City Thunder in Luguentz Dort. He is more than likely, he has earned that matchup. He's earned the right to, start out on that matchup. Obviously, in the regular season, Howie's numbers were lower against the Thunder, and also his usage was lower. Do you think that is kind of a Dort thing, Thunder defense thing, regular season thing? And, how do you expect, Halliburton, Carlisle, the Pacers to attack?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been an issue with Tyrese just throughout the playoffs of having usage games where one game he goes for 30 and 15 with no turnovers, and the next game he only takes 6 or 7 shots. And I think the Thunder are really well equipped to be able to handle that. Dort, we know, all defensive team, and really slowed him down. But am I crazy, and I want to get your guys' opinion here, to think that potentially Caruso's even the more dangerous matchup against him because of his ability and speed against screens? Tyrese really becomes effective when he can get 2 feet in the paint. That's kind of the most important thing. He's got that step back, obviously, in the game, but when our offense really starts rolling, he's either attacking and finishing, or once the defense closes, he's finding guys. And so I expect Dort, obviously, in the starting lineup to drive that and be really physical with him, which Tyrese does struggle at times with face guarding and physicality. But I'm a little worried that as this series progresses, it's actually going to be Caruso getting a lot of those minutes. And I could be overthinking that, but I also know what he brings to the table and think that might be just a tough a matchup for him.
Yeah, I think that Caruso, throughout the regular season, we've kind of been protecting him from himself in terms of his low minutes, throughout the regular season, missing some back-to-backs. And in the playoffs, we've seen him unleashed, but we haven't fully seen him unleashed. He's still not starting games. He's playing, some high-minute matchups, but I don't really think he's eclipsed. I don't think he's eclipsed 30 minutes at all this year.
In the playoffs,
he did one time. Was it the overtime game?
No. In the playoffs, I think he did. I think it was Game 4 against Minnesota.
Okay.
Well, it would have sounded better if it was the overtime game. But anyways, I think fully unleashing him would be and this team, and we'll talk about it, as we get through the pod as well. But I still think this fastball for the Oklahoma City Thunder is playing Chet at the 5 and going small with a Caruso or Casey Wallace in the starting lineup as well, or both of them in replacement of Dort as well. So if that was to happen, if Caruso was to start, just unleash hell, you have at least 7 games, or you have up to 7 games to just give it your all. I would love it. I just knowing Mark Daigneault and how he coaches and how he sticks to his guns, how he sticks to his guys, at least starting the series. I still expect Dort to be, the guy that gets the matchup. And also I expect Isaiah Hartenstein to be in the starting lineup at least game 1 and probably game 2.
I got something to add real quick, Dylan, just on the Tyrese comment, particularly around Dort. I mean, the beauty of the OKC Thunder is that, you have Dort, Caruso, but Casey Wallace, you have no shortage of physical wing defenders that you can throw at a guy like Tyrese. So I think, frankly, for us and what we've seen really all year is it starts on the defensive end for us. When we can get stops and get out in transition, particularly when we're rebounding at a decent rate. We're not a great rebounding team. If you guys are starting to get second chance points and putting the ball in the basket, or it's Shea getting to the free throw line and slowing the game down, it becomes a lot harder for Halliburton to operate because you can set your defense. You can get, matched up with Dort or Caruso. Where we thrive is in cross matches and transition, right? Tyrese is downhill. You guys are trying to match up. You're more versatile than anybody in the league. So you have guys that can step into that and will probably be more effective. But I think a lot of it for us starts on the defensive end and getting stops and running. If you guys have an opportunity to set your defense and apply ball pressure, and we're not getting into our sets until 13, 14 seconds on the shot clock, that's a bad recipe for the Pacers. I can just tell you that. Halliburton is not going to thrive in that environment. So listen, we've seen everything. We've seen face guarding for 94 feet. We've seen them, ramp up ball pressure. We've seen switching, 1 through 5. They're going to have early recognition and make it work, I guess. Make OKC work, but this will be by far and away our biggest challenge.
Yeah, and I think the Caruso thing, like looking back at the two matchups in the regular season, of course, those feel like lifetimes ago. First matchup was no Chet, no Caruso, and I think SGA got his career high at the time in that game. It was 45 points, so he had to score 45 points, and that was in Indy. The second game, I think, was in OKC. No Chet still, but Caruso did play. We played a lot more small ball in that game, and Caruso was a team high plus 22 in that game. And so just kind of like showing not necessarily one game sample, but maybe just like a smallish blueprint of how Caruso may affect the game kind of showed in that game.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we'll have to see, just to reverse the matchup, is what we're looking at against Shea, because I think Andrew Nembhard is going to draw that early assignment. We'll definitely see Nesmith come on to him at points, but I think that'll be slowing him down, obviously, as much as we can. The Pacers have an interesting thing throughout this playoffs where we can kind of survive one guy going off. Like Donovan Mitchell had 48 in a playoff game. We saw Brunson eclipse 30, I think, every game except for the last game in this series. Same with Giannis. And so we can kind of handle one punch. And what we try to do is pick you up full court, whether that's a Nesmith, a McConnell, or an Aaron or a Nembhard, and really try to slow you down to get you into your offense late. But then it's, can we slow the other guys? Has Jalen Williams, he's been a little up and down and polarizing. He came through in some big games, though. It's a Chet. Can we slow him down a little bit? And so that'll be part of it, is whose collective unit can slow down the other one a little bit more. Because I think there's a lot of guys who will be X factors in this series, because I think Shea's, Vegas line right now is at like 34.5 or something crazy, at least for game one, which if I was a betting man, I'm telling you, I'd be over right now, just knowing how the Pacers play and kind of live with one guy getting their own. So we'll have to see what that trickle down effect is, because you might be watching and see Shea get his numbers, but if it's coming at, the slow offense, slow tempo, where we're getting the occasional stop and run, that's kind of how we've won series, is letting the one guy go off. But where we lost in the Knicks series and the Cavs series, those games we did lose, it was when Brunson and Cap were going off, or Mitchell and Garland were having their games. And so it's whether we can slow down some of the other pieces that really become interesting.
Let me flip that on you. Yes. So Halliburton, would it be a sound defensive scheme to allow Halliburton to, if he gets into the lane, go ahead and score, instead of stay on the shooters and one-on-one guard Halliburton? And I know in the NBA you don't really one-on-one guard anybody. Like it's truly team defense. But if your scheme is to say, hey, we don't want the outside shooters to get hot, we don't want the other guys to get hot, if Halliburton goes off for 32, but he has 4 assists, I think that's a win for the Thunder defense as opposed to a win for the Indy offense. What do you guys think about that?
I don't think there's a question about it. Yeah, I mean, Tyrese, as good as he is, his disposition is one of a pass first point guard. His role
floor
is
general.
Yeah, he's a floor general. That's exactly right. And when we're at our best, the ball is popping, it's moving, we're getting shots up. I mean, I think one of the keys, frankly, to this series is going to be our outside shooting. We're the only team in the postseason that's shooting over 40% from outside. I know from an OKC defensive perspective, yeah, I think if there is a weakness, it's probably corner threes, and we're shooting like 47% on corner threes this postseason. And a lot of that's going to come from whether it's Halliburton, McConnell, Nembhard, even Siakam when he's initiating. It's our primary initiators. Yeah, I did hear a little noise there, a little squeak in the background.
Got a cat.
Oh, I love
Oh,
it.
okay. I'm like,
I saw Alex's face. I thought that was great. But no, I mean
that was my first time knowing that Dylan now has a cat. That's why my face was
I apologize.
I listen. We've had cats my whole adult life, so it's all good. But no, I think for us, yeah, there's not a ton of guys that want to get downhill in the paint and score first on this team. I mean, Siakam's one of them, Matherin's one of them. But if you limit Tyrese to be a 30-4 guy, it's not a winning recipe for us. I mean, 24 and 13, that's a different story. I kind of want to, and I don't mean to, this is kind of a burning question because I look at it and you're asking me about Halliburton. You know, he has done a lot of this with record efficiency, right? We saw the game 4 performance where he goes for 30, 15, and 10, or eclipses all those marks, no turnovers. But you guys are turning teams over at what seemed like a historic rate. Every single one of your opponents this postseason has a higher turnover percentage, above 17%. And the Jazz had the worst turnover percentage in the league this year at 17%. So what you guys are doing in the postseason is just incredible in my mind. So I'm curious how you think, I guess, that plays out. Because to me, that's the key. If we don't play clean basketball, this series will be over early.
Yeah, I obviously like the turnover is like a huge story of the series. Like it's how the Thunder gets going. It's how they go on these just like lightning fast. Like I think Rob Perez calls them just like flashes. Like, you know, just like the flash runs of like 10-0 run, like 11-0 run, 13-0 run, like before you even know it. And you guys, you know, again, like you guys have a super low turnover team. I would say that, like, you know, a lot of people, whenever they're thinking about protecting the basketball, they're thinking about like making good passes, like good sound passes, like not taking risks or anything like that. And, you know, the Thunder defense, you know, they are so good at jumping passing lanes and, you know, kind of just like crowding ball handlers. It makes you second guess things a little bit. So I don't necessarily think that we're going to be, you know, tipping passes and like, you know, getting run out layups, but specifically like Casey Wallace, Alex Caruso, or as we so fondly call them, cookies and cream on this podcast. These are two guys that are turnover generating machines, and they're doing it kind of on ball. Like, you know, they'll just, it feels like they'll just be a possession. They're like, that basketball, I want it. It's mine. Thank you for letting me have it. And I feel like that is, if we are like able to win the turnover battle, it's going to be by just taking the ball by full force. Like those guys, like, you know, picking up guys half court and, you know, creating steals, like, you know, poking and, you know, creating transition, or, you know, Pascal Siakam, you know, he's being guarded by like Jalen Williams. He goes to spin to his left shoulder. Boom, Alex Caruso's there. Run out. Yeah. I feel like if we're going to get turnovers, it's going to be like that because you guys are a very good passing team. I don't expect many turnovers with the passing, specifically Tyrese Halliburton, you know, the way that he's able to protect the ball with all the high-level passing reads that he's making. And, you know, kind of, you know, going back to Alex's point about like making Tyrese Halliburton a scorer, the Thunder did a similar thing to Jokic very early in the series. Like, you know, if you recall, like he had over 40 points. I think he had over 30 points, like, you know, early in the series.
Free throw merchant.
yeah, absolutely. Huge free throw merchant. Huge flopper too. That's another story. But yeah, because
that's true.
Yeah, they work to make him a scorer and try to limit, you know, the other people out there, you know, the other people that are, you know, helping in terms of like the shooting. As the series went on, you know, we kind of shifted strategies and just started swarming Jokic anytime he touched the ball. And because of that, his assists started to go up later in the series. So it'll be interesting to see how the Thunder want to attack Tyrese Halliburton in that regard. And, you know, as opposed to last season, it feels like if something's not working at the beginning, Mark is going to be – he's not going to be rigid in his approach, and he'll be able to adapt and, kind of change the strategy, unlike the Maverick series last year.
Yeah.
For sure. I saw in the chat, Big Glock asked if we really think that we can beat OKC.
Don't bury the lead, Big Glock.
Not yet. Not yet.
Like,
wait till near the end of the podcast.
Yeah,
we got you. We got you,
I'm
Glock.
like, okay, we'll get there.
Justin also said in the chat about Kaysen guarding Howie whenever he comes off the bench, and Caruso, again, guarding up on guys like Siakam, Nesmith, and Toppin. I do think that if Siakam starts to give OKC problems, I mean, we've seen throughout the playoffs, Jokic, Julius Randle, Naz Reid, you name it. That's Alex Caruso's got his name all over it. And admittedly, I haven't watched as much Siakam this year as I have in his career. Does he still love that spin move going into the lane?
Oh, there's no question. He's still got this unorthodox with his length, his ability to shift his weight to one side to the other, the mid post. When he gets to his spots, especially against smaller guards, I know how Caruso loves to be physical, but it's really more of just a step back when he gets into that position. And so when that starts knocking down, that's kind of our go-to offense. If the Tyrese, free flowing isn't going, we're going to look to try to find Siakam in the mid post. But I did want to pose a question to you guys, because as much as we want to focus in on Tyrese and the pressure you guys are going to bring at him, one thing me and Brad have been critical of the Pacers is when we bring out these full bench units, TJ McConnell is now the guy, really the only playmaker on the court. We'll run units with TJ McConnell, Ben Mathurin, Ben Shepherd, Obi Toppin, and Thomas Bryant. And we'll go that deep in the first quarter. You'll see that whole lineup for 3 or 4 minutes in a row. And in that unit, TJ's really the only playmaker. The rest are play finishers at that point. And so one concern I have is if we're running those units against your guys' bench unit, the pressure you're going to be able to apply to TJ McConnell is going to force a guy like Ben Mathurin to really take tough shots, contested ISO ball. And we're critical of Ben Mathurin because he doesn't play the style the rest of the team plays. He's a very ISO heavy, tends to make mistakes, kind of slows it down. He doesn't think the way the rest of the team does of hit this pass quickly and cut. He's kind of going to read the game a little bit slower. And I think if you can force them into those types of possessions a lot and really keep TJ out of the paint and make that bench unit struggle, because you would think looking at the Knicks, the Pacers had the bench unit, advantage. But actually guys like Shamet and Wright had the highest plus minus in the series. And I know that can be a subjective stat, but it showed that we struggled with those units without the playmaking ability of a Tyrese Halliburton and truly an Andrew Nembhard, who's kind of an underrated playmaker. So I'll be curious to your guys' thoughts on how you think you'll be able to kind of use those bench units, and if Wallace and Caruso, whoever's drawing that TJ assignment, is really going to be able to slow us down.
A lot of times our bench unit has been the one that's either cut into deficits or increased leads. Usually second and third quarter, that's where either we're coming back from the deficit that maybe the two big lineup has kind of set up in the first quarter, or if we've had a great first quarter, we've literally seen games in the playoffs where it's over at halftime, because of that second unit that comes in. And the thing is about a second unit is we don't necessarily have a second unit that comes in there that is just bench players. We'll have a Dub out there, we'll have SGA out there, we'll have Chet out there, or we'll have a combination of 2 out of the 3 of them out there with the bench. And so when those things happen and you have, of course, players with a little bit lesser talent out there, that's when the Thunder tend to build leads or cut into deficits. And so it'll be interesting to see if Carlisle, changes his strategy a little bit as far as taking that 10, 11-man lineup and maybe shortening it down to about an 8, 9-man lineup.
Yeah, and as much as Shea is good in transition and Dub is also good in the half court. Shea is very much a thrive in the half court, and Dub is very much a thrive in transition player. So those opening second quarter lineups, a lot of times it's Dub cookies and cream, Chet Holmgren, and you name it. Like it might be Dort, it might be
Kenrich, it might be
Kenrich Williams, it might be Big J Will. Like either way, you have like a solid defensive lineup that can get out and run, that can space the floor in transition. And Aaron Wiggins. How do we forget the man that saves basketball?
Yeah, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins,
But yeah, no, that's I would expect if TJ McConnell's bringing the ball up and you got Kaysen and Caruso out there, I feel like they are going to target him, target Mathurin, try to create turnovers that way. And again, it just goes back to taking the ball away. I don't think that they're going to be trying to force the pass. I think they're just going to be I can get the ball from that guy. I'm going to go get the ball from that guy. And now I'm going to give it to Jalen Williams, and he's going to go do something awesome. That's my hope anyways. That was one kind of thing that kind of stuck out in my mind in terms of the bench units, because those guys are good players in their own right. Mathurin can go on a scoring rampage. TJ McConnell, he's in the league this long for a reason. At his size, at his age, he's still able to create steals. He's still able to be an effective playmaker and a scorer off the bench as well. But again, you're talking weak links, I would say that those are some obvious ones for sure.
This bench, frankly, was statistically one of the best benches, if not the best bench in the league last year. And there were periods, particularly during the Knicks series in the semis last year, where TJ and Obi Toppin carried us off the bench. They had stretches and games of really solid play. It hasn't been that way this year, which is kind of counterintuitive, because we were hanging our hopes on Mathurin coming back, being healthy, really being that spark plug, 6-man guy. And he's been a little hit or miss. And really it's his defense that has kept him off the floor more than anything. Ryan hit it at it. He's a bit of a square peg in a round hole in terms of the fit stylistically with this team. But when the game has slowed down, he's shown the ability to get to the rim. But to me, that's going to be one of the keys. If we don't get a couple of games where TJ or Mathurin, Obi Toppin, one of those three guys really, because the other bench players are not. I guess you had the Thomas Bryant explosion in Game 6 against the Knicks, which was awesome, by the way. I don't know if you guys saw that. He hits 3 threes, huge momentum shifter after kind of being benched largely, after Tony Bradley got the nod on Mitchell Robinson. But point being, our bench has been very hit or miss, and it was something we relied on a lot last year. And if we don't get a good bench series, it spells trouble, really, because, I will, to Ryan's point, just to kind of put a capstone on it, I think he and I are both of the mind that Andrew Nembhard should get more time in that second unit to put another guy that can handle the ball and play make, so it's not all on TJ's shoulders. There are times where they will run Siakam with the second unit guys and try and kind of funnel some things through him, and he's done much better. I know you asked us a question about him, and Ryan did a good job sort of talking about mid-post. He's added that three-point shot that has sort of made him a 3-level scorer for us. But when he's out there with the bench and everything has to run through him, again, it's either he's got it going or he doesn't. It's a little less of, hey, we're just going to create the best shot and whoever's on the floor shoots it. Because that's when we're playing our best, that's what happens. It's selfless ball, it's popping, and whoever's got the open look, they fire. And if we're doing that, that means we're playing well. If we're not, it's a problem.
I do want to ask, kind of defensively. We talked about guarding Shea, and obviously there's 2 strategies to guarding Shea. What it seems like is blitzing him as soon as he crosses half court, or just running a 2-3 zone in the set defense. And teams have had success and failures over the past couple of seasons and in this postseason on that. How would you expect the Pacers to attack that? I think I heard Zach Lowe said that they was 11th in the league in terms of the frequency of zone, except they haven't ran any zone in the playoffs. So how would you guys expect to try to attack the Thunder's offense on defense for you guys?
Yeah, I would be really nervous if the Pacers were running zone, to be honest with you. It's not something we've seen at all in the playoffs. I don't even know if we've run a set, to be honest, in zone, really. Maybe on an out-of-bounds play here and there. But especially, too, because I think as that Nuggets series wore on, the Thunder got better and better at attacking specific spots in that zone. And to then throw our team who is not familiar with that. And when you guys have so many weapons, I think it'd be really tough to try to navigate that, because I think you guys would get to the holes pretty quickly. And I don't really think we have the roster. I think the Nuggets did it out of more of necessity, even at points, just with the way that roster was kind of constructed and injuries at the time. I would expect to see way more blitzing and full court pressure. That is where we make our name, is trying to rotate healthy bodies onto Shea, or even just fresh bodies, where you'll see a Nembhard come out within the first 4 minutes, or a Nesmith come out, so that they can come back in at the 8-minute mark of the quarter, 4-minute mark of the quarter, and try to just keep rotating guys. Because what you'll see off of make or miss is we're going to pick up Shea at the point of attack, wherever they're inbounding the ball. And so that's where I expect it. And we'll see how they kind of target Tyrese on defense. He has been largely better than last year, and really better than any expectation on defense. He's still the guy, though, that I expect you guys to go after in the pick and roll, try to get switches. He's done a better job of kind of hedging screens while still staying on his guy and filtering back, because we really don't like to switch that main pick and roll. We saw that with Brunson and Mitchell. Whoever's drawing the Shea assignment, I expect everybody to try to fight through those, but try to hedge. Now, that creates some opportunities Tyrese is very guilty of times, of trying to kind of hedge the pass and screen and giving up whoever he's guarding for an open jumper, open three, or some sort of rotation. And so I would expect to see much more blitzing, but expect the Pacers to hang back and live with the one-on-one matchups a lot, because as much as I know Shea's probably the single most talented one-on-one scorer in the league, we kind of live with that on the defensive end and try to force you into the slower pace there. And because if we can force those misses, even on makes, we'll go out and attack offensively. So I'd expect blitzes and high ball pressure. The thing in Game 6 that we really took the Knicks out on was they weren't getting into their offense until 14, 13 seconds left on the shot clock, because of how much pressure we were giving them. And so a lot of that is predicated on whether we can get makes on the other side to slow you guys down a little bit, but I would not expect to see a lot of zone in this series.
I think we trap before we go zone. I would see us double before we do zone, and we did that a little bit. I understand Cat and Giannis are different animals in terms of their size. They don't have the shiftiness of a Shea. Like, you can get burned trying to bring two, obviously. But I think we would do that before we would play zone.
Okay. So kind of adding to that. So another part of the Thunder offense is, of course, drawing fouls. And I know that you guys foul the most in the playoffs. I think it's 23.2 fouls per game. In the regular season, you guys were at 18.7 fouls per game. So as far as strategy goes, like, is that something that is the defense? Are you guys trying to be a little bit more aggressive, and that's maybe what's causing that uptick in fouls called? And do you see that maybe affecting games as far as, Shea getting to the line 14, 15 times a game, maybe some other players getting to the line and kind of adding points that way?
Go ahead, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah. We are aggressive with our hands. There's no question. Kenny Atkinson, I think after Game 2 in the playoffs against the Cavs, kept saying grabbing and holding in his post-game interview over and over again, just said how much we are. And we are so guilty when people crash that we'll play good defense to the end, and then we'll get a hand in. And instead of going with a hand up, it's a hand kind of in that cookie jar. And I know Shea's going to be talented at doing that, but it's everybody, really. Miles Turner gets guilty of that. Siakam at times. Nesmith and Nembhard, we know, will go for those. And the truth was, we didn't get as baited as I thought we would against Brunson. That'd be my one thing kind of takeaway from that series, is last year we were a little bit worse at falling still for some of those. But even in those runs, that becomes a big play, because it's one of those things where you can play solid defense for 20 seconds, and then all of a sudden at the last second, you put your hand in. And that's where you guys are really going to have an advantage, because really the guys who will draw it, Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard, that is how they play. They are up in you 24/7. Their hands are on you. And as soon as you're going into that shot, they want to contest. They're not falling off at the end. They want to make it as tough as possible there. And that's where we really get into trouble at times. And so I would not be surprised to see this slow down in certain periods of the game. We saw this really in game 4 against the Pacers on our home court, where the third quarter just turned into an absolute free throw shootout because there was just so much going on each side of the court. Physicality, because we get, the reputation of being a free flowing team, but defensively, we want to be in your space. That's really where we live. And so I expect to see a lot where if we can keep our hands up, that'll be great. But we know that that's just not the reality of this team.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see SGA getting 13, 14, 15 free throws a game. I think he's averaging just north of 9 right now in the playoffs. But we saw Donovan Mitchell have 20-plus free throw games. I think our philosophy, frankly, it is ramped up physicality in the postseason, Alex. You quoted the numbers in terms of regular season versus postseason. I think it's part of our philosophy of we're going to play you super physical. Yeah, we might foul a little bit more and send you to the line, but the hope is that there's a wear down effect on your guys, on an SGA, where maybe he's just not used to that ramped up ball pressure, 94 feet, as we like to call it. We know it's not really that, but we're going to pick up in the backcourt. We're going to throw different bodies, like Ryan said. And I think it's just one of those things that you're going to have to pick your poison. You're not trying to stop SGA, right? I mean, you're trying to make life difficult so that hopefully, you can keep the game close and figure out how to pull out a win in the final couple minutes. I just think that's sort of how we've played all postseason.
Yeah, I kind of do want to ask. You guys already kind of covered that. Like, you're not really concerned about stopping Shea. That's actually kind of how you strategize. Like, let one guy get his and try to stop the co-stars. The co-stars, being Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, coming off great series against the Minnesota Timberwolves, both of them, and strong finishes to the Nuggets series as well. Kind of feels like they're kind of peaking in the playoffs, which it's crazy to say. Obviously, like, they both got a long ways to go, but in terms of like playoff production, like, feels like they just played their best games. And I just want to ask how you guys plan to stop them. Obviously we said that we're not too worried about stopping Shea, but you want to try to contain the other guys. What is your plan to contain those guys?
Yeah, I'd say it's going to be really difficult, and I think you guys hinted at it. The scariest lineup, I think, is actually if you throw Chet at the 5. Yeah. We saw Miles Turner last year outplay Hartenstein, at least in my opinion, when he was with the Knicks in the semifinals. And throwing Chet at the 5 now makes us shift everywhere, because if you have Hartenstein at the 5, you can throw Siakam on Chet. Siakam's been better defensively this playoffs than he has been really with the Pacers all, through his year and a half with us. And then you can still put Aaron Nesmith on J. Will, which will be, again, not that you can never really stop these guys, but Aaron Nesmith has some size and physicality that could make it work. But Miles on Chet has some off the dribble game that is not necessarily similar to Cat, because they're different players, obviously, but Cat had Miles' number at time for sure, and was able to take him off the dribble, initiate offense. And I was a big proponent of Chet coming out of the draft and thought he rightfully was taken at number 2 there. And putting that in stretches the hole. And then where do you put Siakam? Does he have to go on Jalen Williams? Like, it throws the whole wrench into the equation. And so I think for us, it'll be trying to find who the matchups really are on each of the other guys, because I think you'll probably put Tyrese on Dort, try to just kind of hide him there and see what you get out of that lineup. And that's where the Pacers starting unit actually as a collective has been one of the best, if not the best, in the playoffs, at least net rating wise. And so I think we'll see an early shift to see Chet and really force us, because the Hartenstein size isn't going to be a huge advantage, where I think the Chet mobility and then making us have to shift our whole offense or defense down one level is really going to be tough for us. And I just think Chet's going to have a major series and an impact. If we have any way to slow him down, that'll be a key for us if we can pull out a few games here.
I'll be very curious to see how much time Siakam spends on Chet, because he's able to move his feet a little bit more. I thought our smalls on Karl Anthony Towns last series were much better than our bigs. He just chewed us up because of his ability to put the ball on the floor, but also hit outside shots and just quick flick of the wrist. And obviously Chet brings a little bit. I'm not saying, again, Ryan said it, he's not Karl Anthony Towns, but he can shoot from the outside. He can put the ball on the floor where he needs to. He's a mobile big, and so it creates problems where I think if ideally it's a Neesmith on Jay Will and it's a Siakam on, but where do you put Turner at that point? That's kind of the I think that's on where
Dort.
On Dort maybe, but then then you got the Halliburton conundrum. So there's just the math kind of has to math a little bit. We'll go small probably when you guys go maybe to a Chet at the 5. We did that when they went to Cat at the 5 last series. We played a lot of Siakam and Obi in the front court so that we could keep a couple more mobile defenders on there. But I like our defensive matchup better in the Hartenstein lineups than I do in the Chet at the 5 lineups. To me, that makes more sense. And I thought we were better against the Cat Robinson lineups. Again, I know those are a little bit different, but I thought we were better in those lineups, and they absolutely torched us in a couple of games when it was Cat with a Josh Hart, even a Landry Shamet, OG. Those gave us a lot more trouble than the 2 bigs. And the same could be said, frankly, for the Cavs series. We did really well against the Mobley, Jared Allen coverage and struggled a little bit when they went Mobley at the 5.
Yeah, it makes things so much easier when Chet's the 5. We've all been a big proponent of running the single big, or not even single big, because like I love Hartenstein, but like Chet at the 5 is like the answer. Like it's like I said at the beginning, it's our fastball, because what you're able to do offensively in terms of spreading the floor, giving guys like Shea and driving lanes, and also getting out and like getting out in transition and getting back in transition, because you're that much faster. And also playing a team like you guys where like by design we hammer shots to the corners. That's like kind of what we do, because we like to collapse on drivers and cutters to the rim. That's just how kind of do. But if you have Chet out there, meaning you have another guy like like Cason and Caruso, it makes the rotating just a little bit easier in terms of like getting put in a blender, as opposed to having a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein out there. Like I said, Isaiah Hartenstein's been awesome for us this season. I'm not taking anything away from him. He'll hit like 3 floaters in the game. He'll have some passes that make me put hands in my head. But yeah, like Chet at the 5 is 100% the fastball, and I would be interested to see like how long it takes for that to happen.
Well, we even saw, Tibbs switched his starting lineup. He pulled Josh Hart and pulled Mitchell Robinson, kind of a flip of this, honestly. But I'll be curious if that happens in this series too, because I wouldn't be surprised to see if there's one advantage, and I'm kind of getting to the lead here of where maybe you guys are the most nervous to see the Pacers is. I do like kind of that Hartenstein trying to pull him out of the paint. We know Miles stretches a lot of bigs. He did that to Allen. He did that to Brook Lopez. And that's an advantage to us if we can pull your bigs out. Then that's when Tyrese can attack, if he can get past your guys' point of attack defenders. That's the one thing where I could see us kind of trying to hit you guys quickly and throw you off a little bit of a rhythm. But where do you guys just see in general? I'm sure that just hearing you guys speak that you're pretty confident going into this series, as you should be. You've been the best team in the league. You have the MVP. But where, when looking at the Pacers roster, do you have the most nervousness? Is it Tyrese's playmaking, billing, or shooting? I don't want to lead you guys to anything, but what would be the one thing we could do to really set you guys into array?
So I mean, if we have a fastball with Chet at the 5, I think you guys going small is what kind of worries me. Like if you have a lineup where you take out Miles Turner and you put, let's say even Siakam at the 5. Let's take out Toppin. Let's put in Siakam. Of course, you got Halliburton. You've got Nembhard. You've got who's the other, Neesmith. And then you throw in somebody else, whether that's maybe you want another. Maybe you want Mathurin in there.
In a lineup like that.
Yeah, Shepard, somebody that can stretch the floor. If you do that with us keeping Chet out there, like it does worry me a little bit because we do that to other teams. We go small against other teams and we completely decimate them most of the time. And so you guys doing that on a hot shooting night, that's what kind of worries me about you guys and your propensity to make shots from the corner, to make shots from three, and for Halliburton to like completely just control the game, orchestrate the game, just like a maestro out there.
I see where he's coming from. I really do. But, we talk about the ups and downs of the regular season and the challenges that you face in that. It also gives you opportunities. And missing Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein early in the year let us get, time looking at Jalen Williams as the 5. And, he succeeded, in small stretches. It was not a sustainable product to win. That's why we lost to the Spurs, without Victor Wembanyama and such. And I think we lost to the Mavericks as well. But in stretches, against the Clippers, he looked great. He's very capable of playing the 5, especially against guys that aren't as big and strong. Miles Turner, big guy. Pascal Siakam, big guy in terms of their height and their wingspan, but they're not the strongest. So I would honestly feel comfortable if you guys go small. Hey, you guys want to go small? We'll go small right back at you, running a little bit of a Shea, Caruso, Kaysen. Take your pick of the other wing, and then Jalen Williams out there. And I think we can go shot for shot with you. Now there is the chance Ben Shepherd turns into Julian Strother, in Game 5 and or not Game 5, Game 4. Game 6. God,
Game
that was so long ago, man. That feels like a year ago,
a lifetime ago.
Yeah, there's a chance that happens, and that kind of blows it up. But I like our chances if you go small. Honestly, I think your guys' potential secret weapon, and we'll talk predictions in a little bit, but I predicted you guys win Game 3, and it's because you have a certain somebody coming back into the lineup who I think played pretty well in the last series, and the guy that we was very high on in the draft, Jarace Walker. He's a matchup nightmare. Defensively, he is a guy that can, not guard 1 through 5, but he gives you some optionality defensively. A big guy that, has 6 fouls at the very least, that can go in and kind of rough up the Thunder defense. And if he's hitting threes, it can present some issues for the Thunder. So obviously he's more of an unsung guy. I wouldn't say that he's a guy that you're relying on, but we're talking about Julian Strothers of the game, guys that can come in and just flip the game on its head. I could see Jarace Walker doing that offensively or even defensively.
So you mean that the Pacers are waiting on Walker like the Warriors were waiting on Curry to hopefully.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a great comp.
Absolutely. He's going to come in Game 3. He's going to knock down 3 threes. He's going to get a steal on Dub, and the crowd's going to go crazy, and they're going to walk away with Game 3. I'm sorry. That's how it happens.
Jarace has been a bit of a conundrum this year, honestly, because you said it. Lottery pick. The guy's got a lot of tools, and he's super versatile. Very athletic, 7-foot plus wingspan. We've seen him. Ryan and I talk all the time about where he's had this ability to kind of be a connector piece. He can do a little bit of everything for us. The switching is certainly some of it. His on-ball defense. I can remember a game against Cade Cunningham where he looked like an all-defensive player. He's got underrated hands in terms of tip outs. He does a little wraparound steal that he'll kind of poke the ball out from time to time. Ryan and I, honestly, when he went down in Game 6 against the Knicks, we kind of looked at each other and said, I know he hasn't played a lot this series, but he's an OKC series guy because of some of the wings and versatile bodies that you guys throw out there. Jarace is somebody that I absolutely feel like if he's healthy can impact this series. Again, not that he's not Steph Curry, Alex, but he can be a guy that gives us a little bit of versatility. Even guarding a J-Dub, guarding a Shea, he can spend some time there because our philosophy is throw fresh bodies, make them work, use up a couple fouls maybe instead of just giving them a bucket. So I'll be very curious to see. I don't know if you guys saw some of the still shots of his ankle injury when he went down, but it was about 90 degrees. I know they've officially ruled him out for the first 2 games. I hope I don't know. Have you guys seen anything? Because I didn't know. I don't know if he's actually official for Game 3. I just know that they said it wouldn't be the first 2 on the road. And so, yeah, I mean, I one other note on him, he was not a guy we drafted to shoot the ball. All of a sudden, he just started knocking down threes. It really started in the G League for, what was our Mad Ants team, now the Noblesville Boom. But he started to become an outside shooter. And at the end of this season, he was shooting damn near 50%, from 3-point range. And that's carried over a little bit in the postseason. He had 2 threes in Game 5. He went 2 for 4 against the Knicks, and then knocked another one down, I think, in Game 6. But it'll be interesting, Dylan, to see if he gets back on the floor and if Rick is willing to turn to him, because he's gotten a lot of, DNP's coach's decision, but then he'll come in and, he'll look like a top, one of our best players for 4 minutes. So definitely something to keep an eye on as this thing unfolds.
And he has to be completely healthy, because if he goes out there injured, that's like blood in the water for Sharks. We saw that with Aaron Gordon. We saw that, just Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. We saw that with them, and we took advantage of that.
Yeah. It'll be something we're keying in on for sure. He was on crutches to leave Game 6. So I don't know. I think he came out on crutches in media availability before we flew down to OKC. That would have been on, I guess, Tuesday, because I know we were practicing down there today. So definitely something to watch, particularly as another option in that second unit for us.
Guys, I've seen the script. Like it's happening. He's playing Game 3. He's gonna be a huge lift off the bench, and you guys are gonna win. I'm sorry.
I'll take. Listen, I'm not gonna fight you on it.
I wanted to ask you guys this, and Alex, you can kind of answer this too. But obviously, Jay Will, the other Jalen Williams, was huge in the Nugget series in the way that he was able to guard Jokic and just really get in his head. Like it was funny to see Jokic unravel to a bench player like that. Kenny Hustle, he wasn't like super loud in his minutes against the Minnesota Timberwolves, but he did get to play in that series and made a solid impact on both sides of the ball in terms of his shooting as well. Is there a guy on the Thunder's roster, again, kind of like you were saying about like a swing player or something like that you could see coming off the bench that nobody's really thinking of, that could kind of make things difficult for the Pacers? And Alex, please tell me why it's Ousmane Dieng.
I'll start. I rewatched. They were playing that second game that we played you guys in the regular season. They were doing a recap on NBA TV like 2 nights ago. So I watched a little bit of that. Nice. I think Isaiah Joe had 5 threes in that game. And it was just like once he got going, we just didn't have an answer. And a lot of them were in transition where, it was a leak out or something, kick out, I should say, to the 3-point line. So he's a guy that I don't think we've said a whole lot on this podcast, but from what I've seen, I think he's somebody that if he's coming in and your others are making shots like that's a big problem for us, because you guys haven't shot the ball great in the postseason from deep. I think you're right around 34%. Not that it's bad, but we've kind of had our calling card there. But if your others get going from a shot making perspective, it's going to be really hard for us to keep up, because that means you guys are probably getting out in transition off of steals. And he's just a guy that, if he's knocking down shots can be scary. And he's another guy that can defend too. I mean, it's just, you got to kind of pick your poison when it comes to your depth. But Ryan, I don't know. I hope I didn't steal your thunder. Anybody else come to mind?
No, I think you hit
I would love an Isaiah Joe game. I would love an Isaiah Joe game.
Yeah, our advantage is going to be shooting. I think if you look down at box scores and see the Pacers with a few victories in this series, it's going to be, you can look at that 3-point line and see that we had 23s in that game compared to your 11 or 12 maybe, or even less. And that's where we held the Knicks down. And really, we try to run teams off the 3-point line, and so it'll be interesting how we defend you. But to go back to your original question, Dylan, I couldn't get Caruso out of my mind. I know we already had brought him up, and he's definitely not fits the mold of somebody you hadn't talked about, but he's one that I could see disrupt this series, and Wallace, because they're both such talented defenders, and we rely so heavily on guard creation and guard tempo that when those guys get on the defensive end, and if they can slow us down in that way, our offense will be foiled, and that's what you guys do. And so if those two come in and are just behemoths on the defensive end, look out, because this series is going to be really tough for Indy.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So I see like the swing factor for Indiana is going to be the 3-point shot. That, I mean, we can almost all agree on that. Is there any worry from you guys that, so when I looked at the numbers from the corners, like you said, Indiana this postseason is shooting 47%. In the regular season, that was 40.6%. Is there any worry that that may be, I don't want to say a flash in the pan, because you guys have played, what, 15 games already? Something like that?
Yeah, 16 games, 12-4.
Yeah, 16 games. Yeah, 12-4. We're 12-4 also. Is there any
Yep.
worry that that has been a flash in the, or that could be a flash in the pan and you could return back to like maybe 40% in the finals? Or like, is that anything that worries you?
I would say the one argument almost against that is we did this last year in the playoffs. So this has now been building for 2 years. You know, guys specifically like an Andrew Nemhard who shot, I think, 30% or just below in the regular season. It's back up over 40%. We know what Neesmith is doing from deep. Miles has been a consistent deep threat, you know, a stretch 5 for basically his entire career. And so I wouldn't be nervous if we're getting the open looks. I don't think there's an abnormality when we are getting those corner looks to see those drop at that kind of a rate. Now, obviously, game to game, you can pull any small sample size and go against the grain there, but I think it's more predicated on can we get those looks against the Thunder? Because if we can, I trust our guys to knock it down. But if you guys are able to collapse us and we're taking – when we get out of our offense, it's because we're taking uncharacteristic shots. One thing you guys kind of hit it at early, Miles is not a big. If we're posting him up, I promise you to, that is a win for you. If we are throwing the ball into Miles Turner in the post, take it every time. We're either going to turn it over on
Rudy
the intro
Gobert
pass.
all over again, baby.
Yeah. Say it always seems to go south, and we always seem to try to look at it. But it's when we get out of those, we're taking contested 2s instead of open 3s. That really throws us out of our rhythm. So, of course, there are times that, you know, there's a worry that we can't shoot 20 of 40 from deep, but it's more about how did those looks go than rather do I trust the shooters to make them.
I agree with that 100%. The shot making can go game to game. I think 16 games is enough for me to feel pretty comfortable that our guys are in a rhythm. They're shooting the ball with confidence, and that's the biggest key is the out of character shots. If you guys can force us to, I mean, if we're isolating and it's late shot clock looks, I don't care if it's from the corner, I don't care where it's from. It's not what we want to do in our offense, and our percentage is going to go down. And I fully expect, Alex, to see a lot of that in this series. I think for us, it's can we get into transition defense if you guys force us into a bad look and not let you guys have those flashes? Because if you have the 13, 15-point flash, that's where we get into a real trouble situation. Now, I say that. We've had great comebacks, but we can't – Ryan and I have been saying it for 2 months now. You can't make a habit about that, particularly against a team like yours. So, yeah, the shot making I think will be there for us, but it's more about are we generating the right kinds of looks? And you know, that story will unfold certainly here tomorrow night.
Process over results.
I was gonna say that, you jerk.
Hey,
it's funny you say that because that's all our coaching staff talks about. It really is.
I mean, it just kind of shows how much of a mirror image these two teams are, because that's literally everything Mark Dagnall and his coaching staff says all the time. 0-0 mentality, process over results, develop the players throughout the season so that when these situations happen in the postseason, you know, they're ready for it. Like
eat
these two
teams, your
Skittles. Yeah, eat your broccoli for you, your Skittles, Trey man.
Right.
But yeah, these two teams are so similar that I did not notice it until I dove into the finals and into seeing these two teams together. Like they're so similar as far as like how they handle transition defense. They're like literally 1 and 2. You know, how they get most of their points is in transition. It's scary how similar they are.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think that's what the beauty of the series is it's really going to come down to who can execute inside their own identity, right? Mm-hmm. If they can play their brand of basketball and do it a little bit better than the other team, that's probably, you know, who's going to win this series. And I think what you guys have is that you guys have been doing it for longer, right? We talked about our rough start to the season. We've had to have some really unprecedented heroic comebacks and shot making and things of that nature in every series, like Ryan kind of kicked this show off with. But I think that's kind of like two sides of one coin, in the sense that, yeah, you guys went 7 with Denver, but you haven't really been in a ton of those closely contested games. I mean, Memphis was pretty much a cakewalk. I know you had the one game where you got down big in the first half, but you still came back and won. And I remember sitting on the couch with my wife being like, put money on OKC. Memphis doesn't have it. Like,
that's what we do too.
That's what we do.
29 points. I mean, or whatever it was. I'm like, I don't care. They're not that team. And so I do wonder, you mentioned Chet and you mentioned J-Dub, like those guys were drafted in 2022. This is the first time, really they've gotten past the conference semis, and now obviously performed well against Minnesota in the Western Conference Finals. You're now in the finals. I just would be curious to see if there's any rattling if games get tight, because that's where, like, everybody had the Cavs, right? They were the number 1 seed in the East. They put together a phenomenal regular season. We went into that series, and I remember listening to It's a Cavalier podcast, which is the Cavs show on Bleav, and all the fan base, Cavs in 4, Cavs in 5, and we got them into some late game scenarios, and they crumbled. And and I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here, but I do think there's a little bit of this uncharted territory for you guys that may be something that we can exploit. And frankly, if we're going to win this series, I think we have to win a crazy game. I think you guys have proven you're the best team in the NBA for the entirety of the season. So we're going to have a little bit of this team of destiny dynamic come into play, and steal a game somewhere in this series.
Yeah, it's funny, the dynamic between the two teams, because in terms of like the comebacks and in terms of like, the people not believing in us, like that was us like the past couple seasons. Like there was many times that the Thunder, like I think the Thunder like lead the league in most double-digit comebacks in like the last 3 years, like by a wide margin. And, like whenever we made that comeback against the Grizzlies, we talked about it on the podcast, like that wasn't like, we didn't have a lot of clutch games in this season, but the core of this team has been together more than just this season. And they've experienced those games in the clutch. They've experienced, battling back and not rolling over, not giving up, and, forcing those comebacks. And Caruso was a big part of that as well. He wasn't part of this core, but he's the guy that is, kind of rallying the team. Like, hey, game's not over yet. Like, let's go out there, give it our best shot. Like, coming out of the locker room at halftime or even on the court, just encouraging, like, keeping the team going. And he backs it up too. Like, he practices what he preached. You see him diving all over the floor, going for steals, knocking down shots, getting transition opportunities. So while we haven't seen a lot of clutch time this season, this team is no stranger to, those types of moments. And even like going back to last year, like it felt like Shea was ready and the rest of the team wasn't. We're seeing like real time, like, it looked hairy at moments in the Nugget series, but I feel like this team and even the coaching staff is showing real time growth through these playoff series. And, it remains to be seen if that is going to continue to happen, through the finals. But I would say the signs are encouraging at this point.
And I would also say that in how much we are similar is both these teams are reaching the finals for the first time, and a lot of these players are reaching the finals for the first time. Like you guys have Siakam, who is in his second finals, and then we have Caruso, who's in his second finals, and then that's it. Every one of these young, great players, Halliburton, SGA, Dub, Miles Turner, who, he's still a young player, even though he's been in the league for like 8 years. All these players are reaching the finals for the first time. And so you could have an emotional collapse, a mental collapse in any one of these teams. Like that's the thing. That's probably the biggest factor that worries me outside of like schema and all those types of things, is just, the moment being too big for one of these two teams, especially my team, especially the Thunder. Just like the moment being too big, you are the favorites, you are the overwhelming favorite. And, the Indiana Pacers have come in with this underdog mentality, which they love, which they completely feast off of. And, something like that happening. That's about the only thing that really kind of worries me as far as the series goes along, and if it continues past like 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, Alex, do you think, and you led me kind of right into the point I was going to make, is that being the favorites adds a little extra pressure onto the Thunder because they're minus 700. I think we're plus 500. This season largely has been just one of those magical seasons for the playoffs. A lot of things fell the right way. I'm not even talking just injury luck, but for the Pacers to find themselves in the finals, like you guys were predicted to be here. And I'm not going to say happy to be here because trust me, I want more than anything to be holding the finals trophy at the end. But it is a little different mentality where we're going into game one like, hey, if we steal this whole thing the narrative is flipped. Now we've got momentum rolling. And do you think your team would be, the Thunder are good at responding if we're able to steal one at home early and how the pressure would flip on that series? It could even come back to Indy because I actually think you're well equipped. And you put it a right way that as much it is some of the first time for a lot of these guys in the series, I think they've got a lot of growing pains in the playoffs. And we can even look at our team last year going to the Eastern Conference in the same way. I'll just be curious, do you think the pressure, being on your side affects the team at all, or are they level-headed? And that could definitely be the answer on that.
So I think them being so young has allowed them to kind of play the role of an underdog. Even though they were the number 1 seed, an overwhelming number 1 seed in the West, when they got matched up against Denver, there was a lot of national people that were kind of like, this could be especially after that game 1, this could be a repeat of the Dallas series from last year, where the moment's just a little bit too bright, the lights are a little bit too bright, and, you crumble. We came back, we were down, 1 game to nothing. We were down 2 games to 1, and we still came back and won that series. Minnesota series, they were coming in. They had beat the Lakers. They had beat the Warriors. And so even though, again, we're the number 1 seed, we come into it. They were in the Western Conference Finals last year. They were a little bit more experienced in that regard. And so we kind of played the underdog role a little bit. And so if they come in with that mentality, I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be set. We've never seen a mentality. We've never seen it from them, like coming into a series where they're like overwhelmingly favorite, especially with these stakes on the line. And so I do think that is a factor that could play, especially if like Indiana steals a game in these first 2 games. But again, we've been here before as far as like being either tied or being down 0-1 in a series, and we've responded, in those situations. So I think there is a possibility, but I also think that we have gotten experience in these playoffs in those scenarios.
Yeah, for sure. And we've kind of experienced like, all the different ways that, a series can go. Like, we just absolutely dominated the Grizzlies early on. All right, Ember, cool. Always having a moment. We dominated the Grizzlies early on. We had to fight to come back. We got down like to the Nuggets, like we lost at home, which is the only time that we lost at home in the playoffs
in a disastrous way for game 1.
Yeah, just completely awful. And then we had to, we basically like had to look at ourselves in the mirror, like, is this how we're going to go out, or like are we going to bounce back? And to their credit, again, like talking about like habits that have been instilled over the past few years, it's not very often that the Thunder lose back-to-back games, like when they're healthy. It's just, their resolve, their resilience, the way that they were able to bounce back is, one of their big strengths. So, I feel very confident about this team, but that is not to discredit the Pacers, like in any way, shape, or form. As I said, I was very high on them in the offseason, and I even made the point, like, hey, people are sleeping on this team because they just went to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, sure, they got swept in the Eastern Conference Finals, but they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, they have that experience. They have those scars, deep in the playoff run. So, they're not to be slept on at all. Did you just yeet, bro? Jesus Christ! I didn't see it. I just heard it. So
trust fall.
That is a representation of what we expect to see from the Pacers. I'm just kidding. All
right.
But yeah, I mean, derailed my point. But yeah, the point is made. Fellas, I mean, do you guys have any other questions in terms of like the Thunder side? Alex, do you have any other questions in terms of the Pacer side? Before we kind of get into the predictions. Not to rush you. I'm just asking.
I think I've touched everything.
Is your cat okay? That's the only question I've got looming right now.
Did it land on its feet?
Yeah.
I just looked that way. She's looking at me.
I do have one thing. I have one set of stats that I look at and I'm like, wow. So Oklahoma City has almost always been the quote unquote either smaller team, less physical team. And so they brought in Hartenstein, and collectively as a team, they've played a lot more physically throughout this season and into these playoffs. But their team has been built to play different styles, but their best style is making sure that you take you win the physicality battle. So playing Jokic, playing Jaren Jackson and Edey, playing Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, like we're built for that. Do you guys coming into this series? I don't see, like, you guys don't play big. You guys play Miles Turner. He averages like 6.5 rebounds a game. Like, he's not necessarily a big per se, like as far as size goes. He's a good, stretch big. He's a good defender at the rim. But outside of that, he doesn't really play big. And so does it worry you guys a little bit that if we do play that too big lineup, that we will beat you guys on the board so bad that it could turn to where we get more extra possessions? And if we win the possession battle, we usually win the game. So does that worry you guys a little bit in this series?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's something we talked about really in every playoff series that we've had thus far. And Ryan hit on it. The Knicks, they went to the too big, Robinson and Cat. And there were the games that we lose and get blown out. It's usually because the other team has 14 offensive rebounds, right? And even dating back to last year, there was a game I wish I could. I don't know if it was game 3 or 4. It wasn't 4. It was game 5 where Hartenstein was an absolute monster on the glass for the Knicks, and because we had gone 2-2 early in that series, go back to New York for game 5,
rebounds, right?
And it was it was incredible. And so, Alex, no doubt about it. There are games where if you guys are getting second and third chance looks and you're in double-digit offensive rebounds, it spells trouble for this team. We have to have guys like Aaron Nesmith. I mean, believe it or not, Tyrese is averaging 6 rebounds right now. That's what he averaged in the conference finals. I think he's somewhere around 5.5 for the playoffs, but it's a collective effort. It's 5 guys rebounding. It's not a Miles Turner. It's not even a Thomas Bryant if he comes in the game. He's not a gobble up the boards backup center, which frankly we've been begging for on this team for years because it's such a glaring weakness for us. But yeah, if there's a game where you guys shoot 96 shots and we shoot 83, we're not going to win that game. And we saw that happen particularly in game 3 against the Cavs when we lost that game, and it was the same story in the first round against the Bucks in game 3 there. They were getting second chance looks. It is one of our Achilles heels for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, if that did happen, like if we were able to win a game like that, it would kind of invoke the Thunder of old whenever Billy Donovan made the decision to start Enes Kanter with Steven Adams and just completely changed the series against the Spurs, just completely dominating the glass. So that would be interesting to see, because kind of everything from like this era of the Thunder is completely different from that era of the Thunder, and it'll be fun to kind of bring back a little note from that. But again, chat at the 5. That's all I gotta say about that. But with that being said, guys, let's get into predictions to kind of close this out. I just have like a few few fun things you guys can all participate in before we get to the official prediction at the end. First one, and this is, again, not a slight at the Pacers. This is a credit to the Thunder's defense. Do you think an Indiana Pacer averages 25 points per game in this series?
No, I think right now Tyrese or Siakam's leading us at like 21, so I'd be really surprised if that changes this series. Just with the way you guys play, and we win with the collective unit anyway, so unless Brad has a different thought, I'd be really surprised to see somebody on our side average over 25, whereas I'd put that number at 35 for Shea on the other end.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it goes back to Alex's point. I mean, if Tyrese is averaging 26 and 5 assists, we're not playing our basketball. It's just the likelihood of that is very slim. I would take the under.
So let me flip it on you guys a little bit. So you guys currently have 6 players averaging double figures in the playoffs this year. So over under 4.5 Indy players averaging over double figures for the finals.
Brad, do you have
over? I'm taking the over. Yeah, I think all 5 of our starters will be in double figures. I really do. I think where that could drop off is the bench. If we don't get something consistent from, I said it before, Obi, Matherin, or TJ McConnell, maybe we don't get that 6th guy over the hump. But I really don't. Andrew Nembhard will have a game where he's got like 4 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, but then he'll bounce back with a 16-point game where he hits 3 threes. And so I think it comes out in the wash where we'll get at least 5 in double figures.
Okay. We kind of talked about Chet and Jalen Williams throughout this podcast. I want to ask, which one of them do you think has the better overall series?
I would have a hard time going against Chet. He's been my guy for a while. I really like his style and think no matter who we try to put matchup-wise on him, he's going to have a real advantage of either sucking Miles Turner, playing kind of spread out ball, getting open looks from deep against Miles, or being able to take Siakam in the offense. So that's not to do any credit to service to Jay Will, obviously, but I think Chet's really going to be an X factor for this series. If this series goes short, I think it's because Chet had an awesome series, and I think if it's one where we can extend and make this really competitive, it's because for whatever reason we found a way to minimize him, and I think that's going to be really tough, and it's going to be a lot of different guys drawing that matchup, but Chet's the one who I would put the circle around that I think is going to have a big series.
Yeah, I agree. You said it, Dylan, with the kind of that X factor, Chet at the 5 lineup. I just think his versatility allows you guys to get some of your best defensive playmakers on the floor, apply ball pressure to our guards, which is that's going to be the tail of the tape. If your ball pressure overwhelms us and we can't get into early actions, get out in transition, it's problematic. So, and I think Chet allows you guys to do that and get guys like Wallace or Caruso on the floor in smaller lineups where you have the potential to shut us down. So, and that's not a discredit to Jay Will. It's just the flexibility and versatility he gives.
And before, I just want
to say it's J Dub.
Yeah, I was about to say they're gonna fry you.
I'm trying to help you guys. I'm trying to protect you guys.
I'm sorry. That's fine. J Dub. I know you guys have 2 Jalen Williams, so it's just yes, I know in my mind I know which one I'm talking about.
Just call him Santa. It's fine.
I'm not even embarrassed. I'm notorious for getting names wrong in real life. So getting a nickname with 2 guys, I don't even care. I know Thunder fans are probably sitting, how haven't you heard this? That's a scramble mode no matter where I am at in life. So I'm not even come at me on that one. I'll survive.
Yeah.
You was about to say something, Ryan.
Yeah. Well, the last point that I'm shocked we haven't mentioned, we talked about Chet on the offense. Defensive-wise, I think he's going to be just as important, and that's why I wanted to highlight, because I think he'll have no problem guarding Miles Turner and being effective in switches and blitzes and bringing pressure and just protecting the rim, weak side help, where he can just use his length. And maybe I'm wrong here, but that might be his biggest strength on the NBA court is just, being able to be physical even with his size, take contact and still contest. And so if we've got guys driving hard, out of control, to him, I think he's going to be able to swallow a lot of that up. And so that's why I think he just has a little bit more impact on each side.
Yeah, I've been really impressed. Like, whenever we drafted Chet, like obviously the allure was the outside shooting and the floor spacing. But I've been really impressed specifically with this playoffs because he has showed some of that. But the way that he's been able to control around the rim on both sides of the ball has just been outstanding and like game changing for the Thunder. So I would agree with you. I would have Chet. Alex, do you have Chet or Dub?
I would actually have Dub, man.
I knew you would. I saw the face you made.
Yeah.
I think Dub is I think they are going to trap SGA a lot more in this series. And so I do think it's going to open up the opportunities for Dub, not necessarily as a scorer, but I think you're going to see a Dub that maybe averages like 7 to 8 assists per game in this series and kind of, I don't know, becomes kind of a Halliburton for our team type thing because SGA is going to be so preoccupied with having 2, possibly 3 defenders either, on him or spying him or whatever.
Keying.
And so I think Dub is primed for a good series, to kind of a series that kind of solidifies his season for this year as a all NBA player, all defensive player, and an all-star. So,
all right,
what he's done is incredible. I mean, to think he was just drafted 3 years ago, it's pretty damn impressive. I mean, he's in the Benedict Mathurin draft, right? So from our side of things, we look at that and it's like we're wondering if Mathurin can get on the floor and make an impact. And you guys have a guy that, you just said it, all NBA third team and is having his impact felt, as one of the best players, frankly, in the league.
Yeah, this is a kind of a tongue-in-cheek question for the prediction, but more total Tyrese Halliburton assists or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander free throw attempts?
Oh, that's an absolutely great question. Oh God, I'm gonna go Hallie. I mean, I because if it's not, then what we don't really have much of a leg to stand on. If you guys if Chet's marching to the line, 15, 16 times a game, that's just not a winning recipe for us. And maybe it is. I mean, we've talked a little bit about, forcing one guy to kind of carry the load and closing off the others. But yeah, I'll say Hallie takes it on that.
Yeah, I'm terrified it'll go the other way. And the gambler in me just can't take that. I was with it. I think he'll average somewhere between 12 and 13 free throws a game. And I'd love to see Hallie above that, but he's right at about 10 through this postseason, and I think that's probably where he'll finish.
Alex?
I'm going to say with Indy's propensity to foul and to be aggressive, I'm going to say Shai gets the whistle, and I'm going to say free throws for Shai.
Okay. Ryan, I'm glad you're a fellow degenerate when it comes to sports betting. You'd be happy, or you could share in my pain to know I was one Jalen Williams point away in Game 5 of the Timberwolves game from winning, like a pretty big payday. So, and it hurt even worse that Dort threw him the worst possible lob on his last possession of the game that would have sealed it. So, yeah, share in my pain. Hey, we'll have to do a collab for a parlay or something.
There you go.
But all right, next question: does Lou Dort or Aaron Nesmith hit more threes in this series?
Brad, do you want to? I guess I'll take it. Nesmith shooting 50% and above from deep, and he has become the guy. If you look back to the Pacers last year, Buddy Hield was the movement shooter, and when we traded him, the offense kind of went through a lull because we didn't have this volume 3-point shooter. We have guys who take threes, but don't necessarily go after that. And so as much as, the counter argument's going to be that we'll probably fall off Dort the most, he's going to be the guy we try to abandon, quote unquote, defensively. I still think Nesmith, his shot volume and shot creation from deep is going to be so big in this series. And we know that he can catch fire and hit 6 threes in one quarter, 8 in a game. And so on that one, I'd feel pretty comfortable saying that I think Nesmith's going to take that one.
I got to go, Aaron. Ryan said it. To me, it comes down to just how well he's shooting the ball. He's shooting over 50% in the playoffs, and I just think, when we're again, when our offense is predicated on creating open looks, he's been really good, particularly from the corners. I think that's an area of opportunity for us. So I'll take Nesmith. I don't know. I know Aaron's probably taking, what is it, Ryan, 6 or 7 a game in the postseason, right in there. What is Dort's volume? I don't know that off the top of my head.
I feel like it's gone down
5 or 6.
Couple.
Okay. I would go Aaron, but Ryan's dead on. I mean, Dort's going to have some open looks in this series. And so he's probably going to have more open looks than Nesmith will. And if he's knocking them down, it could go the other way, certainly.
Yeah, so Dort is at Lugansk.
Yeah, I was trying to
he's at 6.4 attempts.
Okay. Yeah, so that's probably about where I bet Nesmith's maybe at 7, but they're about similar.
Gotcha. All right, last question before we get to the official prediction. Which team plays more players over the course of the series?
Oh, wow. That's another good one.
Rick has gone 11 deep in the first quarter a few times in the playoffs. Just the first quarter alone. Damn. I think we'll have more scramble lineups, if that makes sense, where we're trying to figure out something that the Thunder are doing and throwing in a Walker or a Tony Bradley. Ben Shepherd's going to get minutes in this for sure. And so maybe you guys do that as well, but I would again go with the Pacers on this one. And I think that's a credit to the Thunder, honestly, because I think it'll be more of retaliation than necessity.
I'm going to go OKC for the sheer fact that I think you guys will win at least a game, if not 2, by double-digit blowout. And so, like, I mean, not just 1 or 2. I just mean you'll win 1 or 2 games by a significant. I saw Alex's reaction. Yes.
I knew. I beg your finest pardon.
Yeah. No. You may win a game. No, they're not worried about my J Will comment. They're going to throw me out of the whole thing for that. But no, J Dub, we're learning. But no, I think you guys you'll get some garbage time. I really do, and I think you'll end up playing more guys that way. If I really don't see a game. I don't think we're not the team that's going to really blow you out. I know we had one game against the Cavs that was otherworldly in that game 4, but pretty much everything else has been tightly contested.
I'm going to say OKC. Even if we're just sticking with regular minutes, not blowout minutes, I still think that this series allows Mark to maybe play Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, Kenrich Williams a little bit more if possible, especially if they're the hot hand, if they're making shots. And so I think OKC probably plays a little bit more players than they have been, throughout the second and third round. And I think Indy may honestly shorten their rotation a little bit. I think, after maybe game 1 or 2, like if it's not gone very well for Indy, I think he may try to shorten the rotation a little bit.
I hope he does, Alex. I hope he does. Sometimes Rick is resilient to do it at times, but I'm with you. So I almost hope your prediction's correct there.
Alex, is this the AJ Mitchell series? Is this a series where we get some Mitchell minutes?
We could.
In the finals?
We could.
I love it.
Some Ousmane Dieng minutes?
Brother, don't get me excited. Dieng gang for life. All right, fellas, this is what we're all here for. The rest of the podcast was all just fodder. Everybody's waiting for this moment. Your official prediction for the series, and we're going to start with Brad.
This is for you, Glock. This is for you.
Yeah, this is for you. It's taken this whole time. And we've got a little support. Nat Turner in the chat has been
she's going crazy with it.
She's been going off. And I'm going to preface this by saying, and Ryan knows this is a theme from our podcast, I am unapologetically a homer. So that's kind of leading the witness here a little bit. I'm going Pacers in 6. I know your fan base will say not a chance, but my wife's birthday is game 6. She's an Indiana Pacers dancer with the Pacemates, and it's her final season. So I think this is a storybook ending. Pacers are going to win it on her birthday and her final game at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And I'm going Spurs in 6.
Yep.
All right.
Hell of an analysis there and reasoning, non-basketball
Always.
related. Yep.
Always.
Brad knows this too. I'm a little more pessimistic at times. It'd be the greatest day of my life, but I think the Thunder take this. I'm going to go 6. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 5. I do think we'll have 2 games where we shoot the lights out and do find our rhythm, even against your guys' top-notch defense. And so when we get into those games, we're hard to beat, coupled with maybe stealing one out of nowhere where you think you've got a lead 10 with 5 minutes and we come back. So I think we can etch out a few of those. But as much as we feel like we've been the team of destiny, the Pacers, and I'm sorry for any of the fans listening, I think this OKC team is really just on a wrecking ball to dominate this league and potentially be here a few more times the next couple of years. So I'm going to go officially Thunder in 6.
Okay. And it's funny, you guys mentioned that one of you is more of the optimist and the other one is more pessimistic. That is me and Alex. I'll let you guess which one's more optimistic. But Alex, what is your prediction?
So again, my worry about the youth creeping up and the stage being a little bit too big. With all that said, though, Pacers, Pennsylvania Quakers, spray me with some Macers. Thunder in 5.
There you go. I love it.
I haven't had time to work up my Shannon Sharp priming scheme yet, but
right.
I do agree with Thunder in 5. I can see the series going to 6, just because out of respect for the Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton, Rick Carlisle as a coach, Pascal Siakam as a guy that's been here before and done it. But I can honestly see if the Thunder go 5 out immediately, start Caruso, just go balls to wall, hey, let's make this 4 games and just go home. I could see it being a sweep, if everything came all together. But I don't expect that. I think that it's Thunder in 5. I can see it going Thunder in 6. If it gets to 7 games, I would be shocked. Hey, you guys like making wagers? We can make a friendly wager on that if it got to 7 games. But I think either way, however many games it is, whether it's 7, 6, 5, 4, or somehow 3, I think the Thunder are going to be the NBA Finals champion.
You guys have had a hell of a season. I know why you guys are going that way, and I think you're probably right, but I can't put that on record. I'm too biased.
I respect it.
I'm too biased, and that's just how I am. So, no, it's gonna be. I do know this. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I do think there's gonna be some tightly contested games, and I think these teams are two of the. I hope we put on a good show. I think they're underappreciated in terms of this league, and what narratives dominate the national media storyline. I think these two teams have an opportunity to really make it fun for basketball fans out there.
Yeah, in terms of the NBA Finals, it'll be the most entertaining 5 games in the history of the sport. So.
There you go. I love it.
I just have to throw it there. No, we do predictions every week during the regular season. I don't think I've predicted a loss yet, so I'm right there. It's all.
You've been right a lot.
Hey, if we didn't get hurt, brother, we were breaking some records. That's all I gotta say.
Right.
But with that being said, Brad, Ryan, it was great meeting you guys. Great coming on the pod. Going back and forth on this series. Go ahead. This is where I give you guys the opportunity to give you the floor to tell people where they can find you, anything you might be working on. Plug anything you want to plug. Floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Ryan and I we're big Pacers fans, obviously, lifelong fans. We started this podcast because we're fans. This has really been an awesome ride. You can find us Apple, Spotify, at Pacers Post Up on Twitter. We're really trying to get some more guests on. We had kind of a local legend, Bob Kravitz, on about a week ago. I don't know if that name rings a bell for any of your fans. He broke the Deflategate story back when the Patriots were kind of deflating the footballs and stuff. So he's sort of a local legend around Indianapolis. But we're on the upswing of our pod. We're really just getting going. So we would love for Thunder fans to tune in during this finals. Give us a rating. Let us know what you think. We're definitely homers. If we win a game, listen to our recap pod because it's sure as hell not as tame as this conversation.
I know. I've heard some.
Yeah, we like to have fun with it. We'll pop champagne after a victory, so it's
couple MFers here and there.
Yeah, no doubt. We put that explicit button on there so everybody knows what they're in for. But again, it's the Pacers Post Up podcast. It's at Pacers Post Up on social, and we're just looking forward to having fun with this whole thing.
Yep. Absolutely. And, once again, we appreciate you guys having on here. It was a good time, going back and forth, butting heads a little bit with our predictions and whatnot. But, all jokes aside, I think it's going to be a really fun series. I'm really excited to see it. And, in terms of Topic Thunder, man, we will have representation game 2. 6 of the 7 members will be in game 2. So if nobody else is being loud in the building, we will be loud in the building. And I can promise you that. But with that being said, on behalf of myself, Alex, Brad, and Ryan, hope everybody has a great night. God bless, hoop when you can. And as always, Thunder up.
We say Thunder up.
I guess you guys say yes, sir.
You guys can say whatever you want. Yes, sirs.
Yes, sirs. Yes, sirs. Yeah. Yes,
Like, hey, you got to end every pod like that now.
Yeah.
I don't make the rules.